Hi everyone, my name is Emmy Amarati and I'm Assistant Director of our ACU Online Writing Center, and I'm here today with one of our most awesome tutors, Dr. Tanya Hart. Hi Tanya.
Hi, Patty.
So the topic of this brief webinar is Discussion Board Replies, Polite Disagreement. We'll be posting the links to this recording and the slide deck for the webinar to the Online Writing Center website, and the green links to the resources in the slide deck will be active. In addition, if you're so called, we're sharing a link on the very first slide of the slide deck for you to provide feedback on this webinar or any other webinars that you attend so that we can better meet your learning needs going forward. It's the little post-it note right here. So today we have 3 learning objectives. First, identify features of impolite or ineffective disagreement in discussion posts. Second, understand strategies for effective disagreement and counterargument. And third, we will workshop BIOO 101's Week 4 discussion question 1, Demystifying Evolution. And I'm going to turn it over to Tanya to take us into our learning objective 1.
Okay, learning objective 1. For this first learning objective, we're going to identify features of impolite or ineffective disagreement on social media sample. While social media is for keeping up with family and friends and events and staying in touch with pop culture, and also following the lives and deeds of favorites or unfavorites that we have, it's an open space for ideas. And some people say because it's an open space, it's toilet bowl kind of for all ideas, especially for the worst. So, regardless of what you think about social media, if it's good or bad or whatever, requires humans to use wisdom in its navigation. Not everything not everything will be upfront, and certainly not everybody's going to agree and say. There are tons of trigger topics in the landscape. We're going to encounter these in academia, studies that you're going to have, so get ready for trigger topics. And we're going to encounter academic lives. So let's just look at this example as seen of a trigger topic and see how someone decided to opinion. So, not sure I buy in man-made climate change stuff. If carbon dioxide really global warming, why do we still get record snowstorms and cold? And honestly, climate change isn't even real science. It's not testable or falsifiable. Scientists just their predictions. It's all based on computer models and assumptions. And let's be real, it's just a theory, not a proven fact. Okay, so let's just rest on this for a second. Let's take this seriously. Social media, let's take it apart. So number one, what is no male, female, what is this person saying? What's the thesis? What are they? I think that's in the first sentence. Not sure I buy all this change stuff. That's this person's thesis. They're not buying climate change. You see a thesis, ask yourself why. What's this argument? So number one, if carbon causes global warming, why do we still get record snowstorms and cold snaps? The saying, hey, wait a minute, climate change, is this climate or is this weather? That they're using. The second support is in the next sentence. And change isn't even real science. It's not testifiable or falsifiable. Is this really a science? And then the third, farther down, it's all based on computer models or assumptions. And let's be not a proven fact. So that's the third support for this person's fact or theory. Meh, who knows? Bottom line, I don't believe in climate change. So in the next screen, we're going to look at, based on his opinions of what we read, somebody responded. Wow, Chris. Okay, so on the first person. Wow, Chris. Maybe reading a science book published after the 1970s. Of course, only ignorant people who don't understand basic science. I can see how you have no idea how, honestly, it's exhausting when people keep confused. Snowstorms don't disprove global warming. Scientists test this stuff all the time. The oceans are getting hotter, leaving those poor penguins with nowhere to live. What greater climate change do you need than homeless penguins? And predictions change is that scientists are adjusting for better reason. Autism diagnoses are more prevalent now. Okay, so as we stopped with the first person to pick up, let's look at the response here. Oh, here. Well, we've got a thesis staying in second sentence. Maybe you should try reading a science book published after the 70s. Of course, change is real. So this person is saying this is real. That's their thesis. What is their basis for this? Well, the third line, I can see you have no idea how weather and climate work. It's saying number one, climate isn't weather. They're saying that there is. The second thing that they're using to support their belief climate change is real comes down to a couple below. Scientists test this stuff all the time. The question that Chris had about is it science, is it not science? If science is tested all the time, then it must be a science. Yes, it is. And then for their third support, it comes down to only reason predictions change is that scientists are adjusting for better data diagnoses are more prevalent nowadays. So is it fact, theory? Let's just say it's theory, but theories become few. So I'm just going to rest on this. I think it's factual theory. It's a fact in the future. So these are the three supports then that this person is using for impolite, ineffective response. Now, this response impolite and ineffective? Well, it's impolite. The responder assumed that Chris is out of touch and unlearned. Read a science book published after the 1970s. As themselves, which by inference, this person is saying that they're a scholar and that they've read everything on climate change that was published after 1970. Number one. Number two, they have insulted Chris. They've just called ignorant for not believing in climate change. So, number three, they take the issue of educating people on personally. That honestly, it's a people keep confusing the two. Like, excuse me, y'all are wearing me out. Okay. Change has become a personal vendetta with this person. It's got to be protected from, or they're going to use climate change as a cudgel to attack the. Number four, they give a broadly unfocused explanation of climate change themselves that much more intelligent or understanding of the issue than the comments. Okay, so it's kind of like, let's just balance imperfection with imperfection and being impolite at the same time. And finally, this responder calls out Chris. Well, you're ignorant. You haven't read anything since the 1970s, but leave a name. This is like a drive-by shoot and run. I'm going to call you out. I'm not going to even leave a name. This is so bottom line, depending on where you fall in the climate change, both of these posted comments, they're polarizing and they're insulting. From the perspectives and arguments of both Chris and whoever this anonymous response, either you're supposed to be in support of one of them or you're supposed to be because you're supporting the other. Neither post gives any room for questioning. If you don't fall in the either or other camp, then you're in a nebulous gray area that is probably even more dangerous to people. If you fall in this gray area, neither poster cohort is going to like you. And people on social media are all about the like nowadays. Okay. They're not going to like you. They're not going to listen to what you have to say. You can't educate them on making a decision. You have to either accept as being correct or you have to reject what they say as being case closed. This is not good on either way. There's two features impolite disagreement that we're going to look at. Okay. First of all, you can have a harsh combat. This is literally like, I'm taking my battle on this, whatever this toxic mountain is. I'm going to live or comment. So as a speaker, I'm going to fight dirty. I'm going to use whatever disagreement. So when you come across with a harsh combative, you're going to be using sarcasm, mockery, or you're going to speak dismissively. You're going to take the stance of somebody who feels like they're smart to everyone else, and everyone else who doesn't agree is inferior to stay in their place or come along with them. Prioritize emotion over explanation. This is when it and below the belt, and it's meant to intimidate or silence people. Comments are meant to inflict emotional scars to teach a lesson. Don't, regardless of my stance, don't come for me. Okay. Personal attacks or assumptions, it's like going for the jugular, like is a potential person. You can critique the person the idea, and that's called ad hominem attacks. Dealing with the thesis or the argument straight on, you person making the statement. And this, of course, strengthens the notion who's attacking the person who made the statement. That's that, and that's really wrong. But you see it on social media a lot nowadays. Attack what you're saying, so I'm going to go after you. Okay, and in the people tend to like blood being shed, a good verbal fight, more so than sitting down and thinking logically through avoid having this verbal bloodshed. It's kind of like in so that's at the level sometimes that we're at nowadays, unfortunately. Second, this includes giving judgmental or condescending. Again, this is coming from people who sometimes feel better about themselves. They need to make somebody else feel like they're less or different. Now, there's ineffective disagreement. First, disagreements are ineffective if you lack evidence. When the evidence that you give is cloudy or it's missing, we may be tempted to rely on what we think we know or sense, but we're not really looking for facts. As thinking things are right, you may think that you're on, you may think that you're an expert, you want to have the last word, but it's actually you're being prideful, and you can come across as being really self-important instead of humbly engaging, honor the other person, and that you're having this disagreement. Across like this, you're relying on opinion, anecdote, information. Okay, and people that do this, this shouldn't be, because sometimes everything that looks like the truth on the internet, but it's need to look for backup and evidence instead of having the opinion, think this sounds right. Okay, so you need to bring credible evidence. You can omit sources or reasoning. To do this, you need to move, logic, sources, or reasoning. You move into, you can't have a reasonable verbal exchange when everything is built on the foundation of emotions. Okay. Second, when you counter disagreements effectively, um, it comes across as being unorganized response. I call this slidey, slidation. It's like you're not really dealing with a counter response because your theory down. So you just slide, you go into another position, attack the person bringing the counter, or you simply move on else. Okay, so here you jump between points. You're not really an idea. You're doing this slidey argumentation. Hit a moving argument. So if somebody tries to, counter like on your argument, you just slide into something else. You keep sliding from one place, throwing verbal bombs as you go. Don't do this. Don't do that. You lose focus on the original prompt or the post. This is when we send into total emotionalism. And when you get to that level, back on track. When you get to that level, it's about who's bombastic, or lose track of what the original subject was even about. They have ineffective disagreements. So let's look then at learning objective number 2, how to understand some effective strategies, effective disagreements, and effective counter arguments. So in this slide and in the next, we're going back to that heated online climate change debate. See if there is a better, more effective, polite way to present without devolving into insults and self, like, I know everything, so I'm just going to make you feel stupid and put you in your place. See how this other person is going to respond to Chris. Hi, Chris. Thanks for sharing these thoughts. Climate change is completely valid, and the science can seem confusing, especially experience heavy snowstorms like we did last winter. However, it doesn't contradict global warming. Interesting, Arctic can disrupt the jet stream and increase extreme cold in some areas. Lindsay, 2020. That's the in-text citation. This is important to recognize the difference between weather, short-term, and climate, long-term global trend. The United States Environmental Protection Agency, this is a 2025, has presented a lot of up-to-date evidence the temperature has risen over the long term and how humans have. First bullet, records from land, sea show an upward trend in the global temperature. Bullet, CO2 levels have risen significantly since the Industrial Revolution. Isotope analysis shows much that CO2 comes from burning fossil fuels. Melting glaciers and declining sea ice have been around the world, consistent with scientists' predictions. Go to the next slide. As observations can match these predictions, it makes climate science more reliable. In addition to being testable, climate change is false because the results of observation experiments could prove it wrong. For example, if global CO2 levels but temperatures were not, or if glaciers were growing, that would be evidence against the theory. And are still studying how fast changes will happen. Specific regions and ecosystems of the Earth will be affected. Learn more. I appreciate that we are thinking critically about this together. Regards, Freddie. So you can go back to that previous slide. Bonder provide a different approach to comments that directly counter an online. Well, first of all, let's get real. They say hello and thank the person. Hi, Chris. Thanks for sharing these thoughts. Okay. Of however, okay, now we've got a name here. Okay, Chris. Regardless of takes this counter argument, if Chris believes that this is from Freddie's heart or let's leave this up to Chris. The best way to talk to anybody, anything disagreeable about any potential toxic comments online is to address their humanity. Welcoming terms. Hello and thank you are always to start. So Freddie's got her human hat on here. She knows what. Second, there's no mention of Chris being ignorant.
Agree.
Whether to disagree, I'm sorry, whether to disagree or question its validity as a science, lays down evidence. She doesn't start with a personal attack. You're ignorant. She isn't condescending. She doesn't come, excuse me, I'm an educated professional and you're an idiot. Okay. Instead, open for questions. Third, under Freddie sets an argument, okay, that climate change aren't the same things. That's what she is arguing. It's her thesis. And then she uses verifiable evidence to support this. I love what Freddie does here. She does what I encourage students to come to the online writing center and they're like, okay, look at this, it's like, okay, APA is just more than citations. It's about argumentation. It's up with a thesis statement. They're not the same thing. And then she cites Lindsay 2021, this study, and an EP 2025. She sets these after her thesis. Both of them are recent, and she used these citations so that Chris can go look at the data for themselves to see if this is accurate or not. The next point, after reporting sound verifiable data through the site, as a responder, Freddie then analyzes what he thinks the data means. She takes into consideration all the on rising land and sea temperatures, rising CO2 levels, and melting glaciers, and says that climate change may be a science, something to be critically considered on individual and collective. And then she finally closes with, and she actually states her name. She doesn't do a drop. She says, "This is Freddie." Have a polite, effective response. She's got the references cited here so that you can go to exactly where she came up with her information.
I do miss the penguins in this one, though.
To,
I, I wish the homeless penguins made an appearance, but I guess she couldn't back that up with data from the government or another source to show it was relevant.
that's for Chris. That's for somebody else in another time.
Yeah, somebody else can talk about the homeless penguins.
So the effective disagreement. First, respectful and professional tone is key when dealing with somebody, especially if you're doing it online. People may have perceived Chris's initial response as being ill-informed, or even though Freddie didn't take her response personally. She didn't say, "This is my hill that I'm going to die on," in terms of idiot. No. Instead, she came through the door and brought it by going high and not devolving into self-aggrandizement, like I'm all that and you're not, and using verbal attacks. When you speak in a respectful professional tone, it validates the individual concerns. Climate change is a complex issue, okay? Freddie doesn't infantilize blah. She doesn't infantilize Chris or his opinions. This is serious stuff. Second, she avoids judgmental language. Freddie could have devolved into insults. Judge. She wasn't insecure about her knowledge, nor did she fall making herself come across as the scholar or the brain. Third, she used calm, courteous phrasing, even misinformation. Freddie simply could have laid out the facts from her cited. She created her analysis and let the information for itself. That's what she did. She just laid everything out and she let the information itself. Second, presenting an effective disagreement means focused on the ideas, not on the person. Again, this isn't throwing, it's not about drive-bys. You're entering into a disagreement means that you're creating a space to bring evidence and analysis. Noon, this isn't about having a verbal shootout or a character assassination. So you need to engage with the argument and not the person's intelligence motives. Again, if Chris was seen as ignorant or even going because of some of his anti climate change beliefs, if he was seen, yeah, as ignorant or going low by some people, seen that way by Freddie. In her response, she didn't take the bait. She didn't go even lower in her personal attacks. Instead, she kept track. She didn't go into bomb slinging. Okay. And then, second, focus on the ideas and not the person. This makes you avoid assumption, intent, or background knowledge. In Freddie's case, she didn't assume that or didn't want to learn about climate change. She laid out her argument, evidence, she laid out her analysis to educate. She did it, and she left it up to Chris to move on and to see if she wanted to go and look at the sources and have a rethink. She didn't, person is incapable of movement or change. So there's effective counter argument. First, effective counter argument claims with credible evidence. Again, don't go personal, necessary. Instead, effective counter argumentation logical. It becomes professional. First, support claims with credible evidence. You cite data, example, and things that are reputable and up-to-date sources. Leaves an accessible pathway to have comparative thinking, able to look at different sources, different ways of thinking. Support claims with credible evidence. That means that you're going to be explaining key processes in accessible ways. Again, this isn't a aggrandizement. It's not about, I am the source, I know. Yeah, it's possible and it's very effective to nation in ways that are educational and uplifting and about who's superior, who's inferior, who's intelligent, who's number two. Second, effective arguments acknowledge complexity and uncertainty. You have to be able to recognize that science is ongoing and evolving. I'm a retired historian. Okay. I used to teach the history of health and medicine in the United States. And whenever students would speak negative, ignorant some people must have been in the 1800s or even the 1700s in terms of use and everything, I always had to remind students that whatever beliefs that they this particular time as being sacred, another 25, 50 years, people are going to say, man, they were stupid for having those beliefs because science moves. Right? So you have to realize that science is ongoing and evolving. To have effective counter arguments, you have to acknowledge complexity, uncertainty by disclosing what is known and what is studied and why. Knowledge has to be explored, it has to be gated, and it has to be passed on. It's not static. it has. And then on the next screen, we see have an effective counter argument. You have to use organized structure. This means that you have to respond to each in an orderly manner. Don't go slidey on people. They're shooting me here. Let me move over here. Oh, they're shooting me there. Let me move over there. No. Points and facts in logical, non confusing manners. Finally, use transition to guide your readers through counter argument. Transitions like in fact or for example, or they said, this shows changes in thought and perspective by front, showing that things change. So I'm going to now move on to Objective 3. This is where Emmy is going to step in. Workshop for discussion question in Demystifying Evolution. On the next screen, we see that the week 4 discussion is Demystifying Evolution. Oh, Lord. This is a thorny topic for humans to politely discuss and disagree over. Here for the ACU online instructor directly to this module. I'm going to turn this minefield to me so you can deal with demystifying evolution.
Oh, thank you,
Way.
Tanya. So
Good
Tanya,
luck.
thank you. I need it. Tanya's just taken us through a lot of examples and strategies for effective disagreement and counter argument. And of course, you can use those strategies when you're replying to your peers in public or private spaces like social media, but also in our academic context when you are writing discussion board assignments. So this discussion board assignment is a clever twist on the usual discussion post pattern, in which you usually reply to a question with your own ideas, and then you respond to a peer or two by agreeing, extending, or disagreeing with their posts. But in this assignment, you're actually going to start off writing a post that disagrees with someone. So you're going to get perhaps double practice in disagreeing. To workshop this assignment, we're going to look at the assignment, and then we're going to look at a few not so good examples of how you could approach disagreeing with a writer that you'll be responding to. And then we'll talk about how to make those responses more polite and effective in their disagreement and counter argument. So first, the assignment. Purpose. This discussion will exercise our understanding of the theory of evolution by identifying and correcting common misconceptions using evidence-based examples and correct scientific terms. Those were two things that Tanya brought up earlier in the positive example of how to create a counter argument. Make sure the examples are evidence-based and use correct terminology that you define to the extent that the person that you're talking to needs to have them defined and clarified. So this is the initial post. You need to respond to a social media post from your acquaintance, Bill Finch. Bill has posted the following. Hey guys, ever wonder if evolution was real? If amphibians, for example, frogs and salamanders, came from fish, then why are there still fish today that haven't evolved? Besides, the theory of evolution is unscientific because it's not testable or falsifiable. It makes claims about events that weren't observed and cannot be recreated. There isn't any evidence for evolution, and therefore it will always be just a theory. So we may see some similarities between Bill Finch's post and Chris's initial post, especially the point that this aspect of science is not testable or falsifiable. So in this response, you'll need to address that.
I'm waiting for homeless penguins to pop up here.
Oh, I hope they do.
It'd be
I
perfect.
don't know what they evolved from. I would have to look that up. So you recently studied evolution in your biology class, which is true. You've done this in Bio 101, and you know that much of what your acquaintance said is a misconception. Because you care when people misrepresent the truth, and because you are a kind person, you decide to write Bill a private message to gently explain to him point by point the things on which he seems misguided. First, address his first question by providing the mechanism of evolution that would account for such an observation. In other words, they're talking about if frogs and salamanders came from fish, why are there still fish? They want you to explain how that's possible through the lens of evolution. Next, discuss the validity of evolution as a testable and falsifiable science, list the evidence for evolution, and expound at least 3 evidentiary examples. So, hint, hint, in the positive example from Freddie earlier, Freddie gave 3 examples regarding climate science and gave 3 evidentiary examples as evidence for climate science. Last for this, you need to help Bill understand the sturdiness of scientific theory, meaning how is a theory not just a guess, since Bill seems to think a theory is not really meaningful in a scientific context. And also, in good faith, disclose any information that evolution cannot answer. And Tanya brought this up earlier too, that when you're presenting a counter argument, you can always admit where there are weaknesses that still need to be explained and explored to show a person that I'm not trying to be a know-it-all here, but here's what I do know, and here's what we still need to figure out together. Okay, so make sure your post is grammatically correct. Use full sentences and write professionally according to the discussion question standards. For this assignment, you do need to use 1 or 2 references to cite or justify your response. They give you examples on how to cite sources in APA format. Of course, as Tanya showed us earlier, we do follow author date format. So you would have the reference at the bottom that begins with the author, followed by the date information. And then in your text, you would have in parentheses, author, comma, year. Or you could have the author in the sentence with the year in parentheses after it, just depending on how you want to present it. We'll see some examples of that on our next few slides too. So how can we improve this? Here is an example of how you probably do not want to address Bill. Just because you can't figure out why we have both fish and amphibians on the earth today doesn't mean evolution is wrong. There is plenty of evidence. Just try Googling it. So obviously, this is very condescending and it critiques Bill as not being able to figure something out. And then,
That's a drive-by.
yes, exactly. And there's no actual evidence given. Referring someone to a Google search is not the same as citing a credible source. So after, we have this. I understand why the continued existence of fish could seem confusing if evolution shows amphibians evolved from fish. However, both types of animals can still exist today because blank, author, comma, year. So to avoid kind of writing text for you, we're using a fill in the blank structure here, but it does show you basic elements of the response. Here, instead of implying that Bill is ignorant, the writer is first trying to validate Bill's point by acknowledging, hey, I know this subject matter is confusing. And then, of course, there's a placeholder that would include an explanation cited from the credible source with the author's name, comma, and the year. And in addition to the fact that Bill will just receive this counter argument better, he'll end up with a reasonable explanation and a source that he can then go and look up and review to learn more about this opposing view from the position that he holds. Number 2, you are so wrong in saying that evolution isn't testable or falsifiable that I'm not even going to justify it with a response. So here we've got another personal attack. You are just so wrong, Bill. And it's also very emotional because this writer is just so taken aback by Bill's ignorance. They can't even justify Bill's idea with a response. But again, there's no clear explanation or reliable source cited. So when Bill reads it, he's going to feel defensive and he's going to hold his ground even more firmly. Here's a revision. In fact, evolution is both testable and falsifiable. For example, scientists have tested it by author year. The theory would have been proven falsifiable if However, their observations supported evolution by showing So this version with its blanks shows that the writer is going to use examples and cite the examples to show how the theory of evolution has been tested. And they're also going to examine the other side of the coin. This example shows that scientists have tested evolution and obtained findings that support the theory. But on the other hand, the testing could have shown the theory was wrong or false if it resulted in a different set of findings. Another really nice feature of this response is that it's well organized and it uses transitional language to connect and show the relationship between the ideas. At the beginning, the words in fact signal that the reader will make an assertion they think is true. For example, signals that they'll give an example. And at the end, however, shows that they'll give an opposite but related idea. So that makes it very easy for Bill to follow along with the logic. And our last fun example, saying that evolution is just a theory shows that you don't even know what a scientific theory is. So this is just another condescending personal attack. You just don't even know what you're talking about. It's like telling them to go read a science book that was written later than the 1970s. You don't want to do that. So here is a little bit more objective of an approach. Author Year explained that a scientific theory is much sturdier than a guess or hypothesis. A hypothesis can't evolve into a theory until . So, as I said, this response uses much more objective phrasing, focusing on the idea of a theory versus a guess, instead of on Bill as a person. And again, the format shows the writer is going to use cited information to build an effective counterargument, including providing clear definitions of a hypothesis versus a theory so that they can help Bill understand how those terms are differentiated in the scientific context. So hopefully those before and afters and Tanya's before and afters earlier helped you achieve our learning goals today, which were to identify features of impolite or ineffective disagreement in discussion posts, no drive-by attacks, as Tanya said. And if you're going to talk about homeless penguins, please follow the second goal, second bullet of strategies for effective disagreement and counterargument. You got to have a source about those homeless penguins to show that it's true.
Protect them.
Yes. And finally, we workshopped BIOO 101's Week 4 discussion question 1, Demystifying Evolution. Before we wrap up the video, we're going to tell you a little bit about the Online Writing Center. You can check out the Online Writing Center group at this first link in our My ACU forum. On the second link, you can watch a video for the steps to help you make an appointment and submit a paper. We do work with you with any stage of your writing, from pre-writing and brainstorming all the way to editing and publishing. We have 2 types of appointments listed on the schedule. First are our email asynchronous appointments when you upload the paper prior to the appointment time, and we will send you feedback by email within 24 hours. That email is called something like the Writing Center Report. We also have Zoom appointments if you want to come and talk one-on-one with a tutor on Zoom. For those, you go to the schedule and click on the Zoom link at your appointment time, which is in Central Time. Please keep in mind, because I know we live all over the country. You can also make your appointments up to 2 weeks in advance if you'd like to use that as kind of planning out your writing schedule. At this third link at the bottom, you can access many writing-related resources on our Online Writing Center website. And at the bottom, again, we have a link to the webinar feedback form if you would like to tell us your thoughts on this webinar. This graphic is a neat one to simplify the Online Writing Center submission process. First, you schedule an appointment up to 2 weeks in advance, as we said. Second, you upload your file. You can make the appointment 2 weeks ahead of time and upload your file 5 minutes before the scheduled appointment time, and you're good to go. If you're making a Zoom appointment, you may not want to upload a file at all. You may just want to come and bring your assignment and your ideas that you've brainstormed to kind of talk them through with the tutor, and that's okay as well. These are some of the resources that we offer through the Online Writing Center or ACU in general. First, we'd like to share the link to the ACU Libraries distance learning portal because that's where you need to go to find your evidence a lot of times to create your counter arguments. So maybe there's something about those homeless penguins if you go search the distance library portal. Homeless penguins would actually be a fun query to put in. I might try that later. We
Knock yourself
also,
out, Emmy.
thank you, thank you. Um, we also have this link to our APA template. It's a direct link. Please use it. It saves you so much time with trying to format your paper according to APA guidelines. We have an APA self-paced course. It's interactive. You get to click on a bunch of things if you'd like a fun way to learn about APA format instead of just reading a bunch of words on a paper. We also have our Online Writing Center YouTube playlist where our greatest hits of webinars are posted. This is a slide that shows different ways you can contact us. We have a Central Online Writing Center email address at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. If you have a question about how to make an appointment or you have a quick question that doesn't require a 60-minute appointment, you can send it to this central address and all of our tutors have access to it. So usually the question gets answered pretty fast. You can schedule an appointment at the second link, visit our Online Writing Center website at the third link, and again, our webinar feedback form is at the bottom. Can you tell we really want your feedback on our webinars? This webinar is part of a series we're doing this term, I believe a series of 4. Tanya and I will be releasing another one in the next couple weeks, but already this term we've done discussion board replies, do's and don'ts. And we've done discussion board replies, definitely don't do this. So there are a lot of additional examples of how you should and should not be responding to your peers in the context of your discussion boards. And with that, we have finished this webinar on counter arguments, polite disagreement, etc. Again, Tanya and I will be sending out another webinar soon on discussion board replies and posts and etc. And we look forward to making that one for you in the next couple weeks. Thank you for working with
Yes,
me today,
definitely.
Tanya.
Always. And you guys just do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I mean, that's all.
I think that is the best way to think about interacting on discussion boards and social media, for goodness sakes. Be nice to one another.
Amen.
If you don't want somebody to say it to you, don't say it to them.
That's right, Emmy. Watch
So,
out for those homeless penguins.
exactly. I am going to look that up on the. I'll let you know what I find out, Tanya, about the homeless penguins in the library
Thank
website.
you.
You're welcome. Bye, everybody.